what's the greatest challenge in living out the Benedictine charism? What is that, do you think? Or what's the more difficult thing that you, I don't know personally so much, but just in sort of, you oversee the lives of many young men, you're part of their formation. Where do you see the greatest struggle in becoming a Benedictine? That's giving me secrets. So.
No. I think the greatest struggle that people have long term is obedience,
right,
and giving up their personal autonomy. Right. You know, well, St. Thomas shows clearly the three evangelical counsels: poverty, chastity, obedience. Obedience is the greatest and the hardest.
Yes.
Because to poverty you give up material goods, to chastity you give up bodily goods. Through obedience you give up the goods of the spirit. Right? A man values his autonomy very much.
It doesn't age. You know, our attachments to physical things and attachments to the flesh kind of ages with us. But that one spirit doesn't.
No, that doesn't. On the contrary.
Yes.
On the contrary, the older you get, the more you want to do things your way. So that's important to doing a good novitiate and being reminded of these things. So yeah, there's no doubt about that.
How do you prepare men for that then? Because our world is so geared to autonomy, to the individual, to the personal satisfaction and fulfillment. That would, even a young fellow from the best of Catholic families is going to be influenced in some way. So this is probably an acutely modern or contemporary kind of struggle. It's a perennial one, but I think it's certainly been put on, how should we say, put into overdrive in the last 50 to 100 years. How do you prepare a man to actually give up his will?
So it is a grace. There's no doubt it's a grace. And how to achieve this grace? Well, I think, what I can say personally is that for me, the most fundamental point, the beginning of my vocation, when I was still a teenager, was the realization of the importance of eternity.
Okay.
We're here for a few short years. It's really eternity that matters. You know, your life, I tell this to my retreatants, and they're always impressed, you know, well, before you were born, there were millennia, perhaps billions of years, right, before you were born. And even before there was anything, there was God for all eternity, right? After your death, there'll be those same millennia, those same billions of years, same eternity of God, right? In both directions. Well, between those two, there's this, poof, that's your life.
Yes.
It's totally insignificant compared with eternity, right? So that means you have a very short time to use it well. Life is very short. It will end soon. Even if you live to be 100 years old, it will end very soon. And when you come and appear before God, you want to have used your life totally for God, right? That's the idea. That struck me very much when I was a young man, you know. It serves no purpose to pursue anything else. It's not going to get you any profit. And you talk about the fact that it's increasing difficulty nowadays. People are more and more autonomous. At the same time, we can see better where all that leads. You know,
Yes.
People who have all the pleasures of the flesh they want, people who have all the money they want, people who can snap their fingers and get everything, they are the most wretched people on the planet. They're not happy. We know that, right? Okay. Well, that just confirms what I thought. That no, the choice is for God, right? So once you get that, it makes it much easier, you know, to give up this particular thing you like so much, or this particular decision you'd like to take. Well, I'm going to accept to give that up because the habit says no, it's not for now, or whatever, you know.
How do you teach him that though? Like, what are the concrete steps that?
Oh well, look. I mean, practically, it's we obviously when a novice comes in, we read the rule, comment the rule. Every day there's a commentary, a short commentary on the rule, because we read the rule in community every day, every morning, a little bit of it. So that 3 times a year, the whole thing is read in community, and the superior has a little window there to give a few words of education if he wants. I also will give once a week a longer spiritual conference about these things. So you teach them what it says, what the commentators have said, so they learn that. They learn the practice of it. When you're a novice, it's easy, right? It's easy when you're a novice.
Why is that?
Well, because it's new. Because assuming you have a lot of goodwill, you know, it's new. Okay, what Father Pius said, let's go. Boom, no worries. And then the problem is when you made profession, solemn profession, you're a solemn professional. Oh. Right. Oh, now I'm a solemn professor. No, now I have my voice in chapter. Now right?
Oh, okay.
And then
comes the temptation, you think?
And then even more when you're the priest, right? Oh, no, I'm a priest. I'm not Father Prior, right? So that's a normal thing. It happens everywhere. Then, okay, the old man kind of can come along and say, gosh, you know, you're just as smart as Father Prior. And by the way, some of his decisions are pretty bad. You know, everybody has these temptations.
Right.
You know, the same things happen in families, right? You know, the son gets a certain age and his father doesn't know anything, right? So
That's the best of it.
as one of my novice masters used to say, yeah, well, at one stage in your life, it usually starts when you made your first profession, but real big time when you made your solemn profession, and especially when you're ordained.
Right.
You got these horns that start growing. You know? like the young steer who, when he's small, it's okay, but when he starts getting big, ooh, you don't want to mess with him, right?
Yeah.
And that's a natural thing. You mustn't be surprised by it. And nobody's surprised by it. But so that's when the real novitiate starts, right? In the sense that you learn in concrete facts, events, how to live obedience.
Right.
Because there are going to be things that you want to do. There are going to be things that you have that aren't going to be followed, right? You're going to say, well, Father, we should do this, and Father's going to say, well, no, we're not doing this. And you know what? I can't even tell you why we're doing this, but we're doing this.
Right.
You know, that's the hardest thing. But superiors can't share everything, you know, it goes to make a decision. And that's the hardest thing, but that's where you learn. That's where you learn. Now, this is where the virtue of humility comes into play, because St. Benedict, you know, the longest chapter in the rule on humility. If you have the humility, if you've got a bit of humility, you'll be able to take that. You know, you accept that. And then you start to go, then you start becoming really obedient, in the sense that you learn that, well, at the end of the day, it's normal that the superior didn't take my advice.
Mm-hmm.